वेलकम टू नेशन स्टेट डायलॉग सीरीज राष्ट्रीय राज्य संवाद श्रृंखला में आपका स्वागत है. 欢迎收看民族国家对话系列. I'm Dr. Geeta Kochar, moderator for today's discussion. Today it's our pleasure to have with us Professor Jian. And Professor Jian is the Secretary General, Shanghai Academy of Global Governance and Area Studies at Shanghai International Studies University. He is also the Director of the Center for British Studies, SISU, and Director of the Center for World Thinktank Studies, SISU, a non-resident senior researcher at the Beijing Club China Diplomacy Association, a non-resident senior researcher of China Forum, Center for International Strategy and Security, Tsinghua University, and the executive board member of Shanghai Chunqiu Institute for Development and Strategic Studies. He obtained his master's and doctorate degrees all from Fudan University. So welcome to our show, Professor. Okay, so let's begin our discussion from China-EU relations, which is also one of your main subject. How do you see the modern China, European Union relations and, China-EU investment deal that has happened?
Well, when we talk about China-EU relations, we use three very important, we usually attached, importance to three perspectives. We say China and the EU, Europe, both are, two important civilizations, make a very unique contribution to the evolution of human culture and the civilization. And also we are two important stakeholders politically in the international world. And also we are two huge markets for each other. We all know in the past few years, for this or that reason, EU takes some very, restrictive measures against, in their name say, de-risk, another term for decoupling,
and then
European version for decoupling, and let's say de-risk, or another version, let's say like coercive labor, or they have many names. They have many excuses. But interesting thing is, no matter what happened, you will see that our bilateral trade amount has been year by year growing very, very stably. That is something very interesting. Okay, so we say that we have hard need for mutual market. That is something we would acknowledge, never doubt it. And yes, however, I think ever since the breakup of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, the conflict has actually put China into a very embarrassed situation, because the reason here is, China, the EU's logic goes like that. Well, China, you must pick up side. Well, you must be in full support of our position against Russia. This is absolutely against China's sovereignty and our national interest. We have good relationship with Russia, and we also have a relationship, a very comprehensive relationship with the EU, and it is absolutely against China's national interest. Say we must sacrifice one side of interest for the insurance of the other side's interest. That is not China's style. And also, China's logic here is very clear. As Minister Wang Yi, I think it was last year, and he just told very directly to direct. The diplomatic representative of EU. He told her that China was worried about, because there were a lot of discussion in the Western media, in the Western think tanks, say, well, we must eradicate Russia first, then we will aim at China in the future. Well, let's just put you into China's shoes. When you were talking about it in this way, do you think that you will be stupid enough to, let's say, well, we must trust you, we must sacrifice our interest for your interest? That is something in my opinion, very ridiculous. Don't you think so?
Yeah.
Well, so in this sense, yeah, we have some skirmishes or some conflicts in this or that way. But generally, I think China has sufficient confidence and the power to manipulate the evolution of their bilateral relationship, and we are pretty sure that China is an indispensable partner for EU's future if EU wants to win a bright future.
So, but one of the things which is coming up when we talk of EU is about the UK, which has been very vocal in saying alienate China, especially following the Brexit. UK has been very vocal in saying, you alienate China. So, where do you see the ties developing between UK and China?
You mean the bilateral relationship?
Yes, in terms of the bilateral relationship.
UK and China bilateral relationship.
Right.
I do have something to say because I followed the UK China and the Sino-UK relationship for I think at least for 10 years. I remember in 2015 that it was the year that our President Xi visited UK, and at that time the then Prime Minister is Cameron. I really personally I admire Cameron very much. I think he's a very revolutionary and a very enterprising prime minister as representing the young generation. But now he's a little bit out of date. And the Cameron President Xi and the Cameron both actually forged the idea of the golden period, a golden area for the bilateral relationship. However,
Yeah.
unfortunately, in 2016, Cameron was ousted from the Downing Street number 10
Yes.
because of a very, very, in my opinion, very piteous, very pitiful a referendum that is a Brexit. And have a look at what happened in UK for the past 10 years. We have to admit that Brexit so far resulting in no economic progress, but more and more severe social social insecurity and instability. And do you know that just the last a few days ago, the probably the area level. I mean the under central government level in the Congress election. Actually, the Conservative Party has disappeared. The Reform Party has won a lot, and UK's political situation was absolutely and now in a enormous turmoil. So now my first reply is that uh, can you imagine during the past 10 years, UK's prime minister has been changed at such a frequency that we even fail to recognize their names. Can you imagine that? Can you wish for a very, very harmonious bilateral relations? you know
Yeah.
Come on, let's be very, very candid here. Who can build up a stable bilateral relationship with such a very much changeable government? This is
Right.
something quite easy to answer. And however, so far, I my study shows that actually the bilateral trade amount has been adding up to let's say yes, that is what is it, 100 trillion. Yes, more than 100
Mm.
trillion. That's good news. That's good news. But UK in the European area, UK and China economically actually are very much complementary with each other. However,
Mm.
so far, because of many reasons, some reason is from the domestic politics. The political idea has been very much set in Cold War ideology, or let's say that kind of zero sum game mentality. And some other
Mm.
reason is because UK I was told very directly by some expert from UK. They said that actually UK has no real independence nationally because they would be largely manipulated by some other power. In this sense, that we cannot imagine and expect, anticipate a very good, promising bilateral relationship with the UK. However, China has sufficient patience, and China welcomes any communication and dialogue with the UK. And we think that despite of some skirmishes or conflicts, controllable conflicts, I think we could hope for a promising future of our bilateral relations, particularly when time will tell when we have good timing. I think there will be better outcome for our bilateral relations.
Oh, that sounds a very positive, indication of how UK and China is going to progress. But let me, okay, I mean, let me go back to your own research, which is on civilizational understanding between Europe and China, and as I
Yeah.
understand, you've done a lot of deep research on that. So, can you give us some insights on it, and how in future will China and EU relations develop in terms of the connections that they have?
You mean the culture, from a culture perspective?
Yeah, from the culture and civilizational perspective.
Now, if we talk about a global cultural civilizational perspective, I think we have many nations to mention. Yeah, China, America, while India, while Latin America, Russia, EU, European culture, and let's say, well, many cultures. Now we say that President Xi made several initiatives. One is a global civilizational initiative, that is GCI, Global Civilizational Initiative. The first principle is that we must acknowledge the diversity of cultures in this world. Every culture has its value system. Every culture, no matter how large or small it is, every culture should enjoy their equal position, and they should have the right to develop themselves culturally. And we encourage the culture communication and dialogue instead of cultural isolation. And some culture is superior to the other cultures. This is a ridiculous idea. Well, in this sense, we talk about the future, common future for mankind, civilizationally speaking. Now, I'm personally very much worried about the common future globe, because have a look at what happened now globally. We have many reasons to worry about our common future for mankind. You know,
Right.
we see many more area, area conflicts, large or small, have occurred in the past few years. We see international trade, the order has been very much, abandoned by some reasons. And we see the uprise of AI, the technology, has resulted in so much worries, socially speaking. And what does the high technology mean for the human being's future? And if the world is more and more unbalanced, as we have described what happened in America domestically, so
Right.
many reasons for our researching circle to worry about. However, um, let me be very straightforward. I'm personally very much, I'm personally very much against capitalism. In my opinion, as what I've learned from Western philosophy, I think all the problems actually result from the popularity of capitalism. Or
Okay.
let's say, capitalism as a form, as one form of modernization. Capitalism as one form of modernization is a kind of fatal illness we are in face of today globally. So in this sense, we talk about a civilization. You know, Western capitalism is sitting on Western civilization, roughly speaking, from the, let's say, the 14th, 15th century. Modernity as the first expression of modernization globally has been widely accepted in Europe and largely copied globally. But we must think about a new form of civilization. If it is possible, we must figure out a new form of lifestyle to think about how to take a life which is not dominated and manipulated by capital. Capital is evil in this sense. What happened in America is the society is in full manipulation of capitalism. This is a very typical example. You know, if a nation is fully falling into the trap of capitalism, oh, there's a little slim, there's very little hope for the society. In my opinion, there will be very, very big serious problems to burst out in the future. So in this sense, I talk about a civilization. I hope
Mm.
for a civilizational conversation and deeper communication to figure out a common future for our mankind. This is something I'm really worried about, and also I'm really interested in.
This is something in the larger, Chinese concept of global civilizational, initiative that comes under the BRI. Is it the same approach that you're looking at?
Yes, but BRI. Yes, BRI is a culture exchange initiative, but BRI, largely speaking, especially on its initial stage, is a kind of connectivity for economy. And
Right.
but then BRI developed into the connectivity,
Mm.
economical connectivity, political exchange of ideas, and culture connectivity. Yes,
Mm.
in this sense, I agree
Uh,
with that. We would like to say BRI is a kind of initiative, which is well, let's say it's a kind of specific, tangible platform. It's kind of
mhm.
platform to adopt the principle of GCI. This is my
Oh, right.
interpretation.
Oh, okay. So in terms of, continuing with this BRI thing, as regards China's investments in EU under the BRI, there seems to be some divergence among EU members, right? So how do you assess it, and what plans China has about investment in EU?
Well, the investment in EU in China is a as far as I know, as I just mentioned, our bilateral trade amount is increasing stably. But
Mm.
EU in the past few years has adopted some restrictive policies
Mm.
against the China's investment in the name
Right,
of national security, or in the name
right.
of in this or that kind of like a
Mm. Mm.
improper competition, like a coercive labor, or these kinds of very, very complicated, very, very complicated, to be honest with you. And but have a look at what we have achieved in terms of the EU China trade relationship. Yes, we have kind of, let's come trend EU exclude the trend service exclusively for EU, and we just connect to China, Eurasia and area in Middle Asia countries, and with EU. And now we also helped the Dutch to make a lot of improvements about their shipping business in terms of Notre Dame. And there's a very typical example is what is the name of the port? It is located in Greece, which used to be a very typical enterprise on the verge of bankruptcy. But China's investment saved it, and now belafster, and now it has developed into a ranking the world top level port, and made a lot of investment as well as bring a lot of benefits for the local people. That is a very typical example, Belafster. So in this sense, I think that yes, China will by all means try to push the adoption of some projects and programs for the enhance of our China EU trade relations.
Like get I'm going to go back to your civilizational notions and terms of what is your research on that. And you generally use traditional Chinese values to narrate China's stories to the world. uh,
Mhm.
and especially what you're focusing is about the China's global focus as basically a natural extension of its historical identity. So
Uh-huh.
what is this historical identity that you're talking about in China in terms of its extension to the global focus?
Um, I see a point. Um, well, first, according to a global civilizational initiative, China would definitely on the position to encourage or stimulate. I mean, give push to all the nations to take their own way or their own road to modernization in response to their own cultural heritage. This is
Right.
China's one principles in the initiative. In this sense, China acknowledged the diversity of cultures. This is on principle, definitely. And what China has achieved, or China's national modernization experience, has confirmed us with the idea that a successful road to modernization must be in perfect echo to its tradition and culture. This is a
Mm.
principle we would highly recommend to all the other nations. Well, however, we also call for the common value of mankind. We never agree with the idea that, let's say, democracy or freedom is exclusively enjoyed and possessed by some sole nation or country or civilization. It is a
Mm.
common it is a common value shared by all the participants, but
Mm.
in cultural civilizational expressions, Indians have their own you have your own interpretation about your life value, your freedom.
Mm.
We Chinese have our own life value, our own freedom. And let's
Mm.
say, well, American people, they have their own style of life, whether you like or not,
Mm.
but that is their life, their tradition.
Mm.
So why not we respect each other instead of say one is superior to the other? This is something
Mm.
we never agree with. In terms specifically talk about the Chinese civilizational value. Now, to be very put in a very simple, I think while China is a nation very much attached to China is not a is a non-Western religious nation. We don't have the
Mm.
Western religion. When
Mm.
we have our own value system, which is largely based on, let's say, a Confucianism
Mm.
as the mainstream, but with other branches of ideology. We
Mm.
also take the idea of Buddhism from India, and
Mm.
digest it, transformed it into our own culture. So Buddhism is also popular in China,
Yeah.
and then we stick to a principle that a peace is very important. We want to build up a harmonious society which involves all the social participants. So in this sense, we attached very much importance to the family value. So far, no matter how much modernized China is, China as a nation is very much, addicted to the defense of family value in China. And we are not that kind of, a liberal individualism is not popular. The individualism as a core value of the Western ideology enjoyed is not I think can never be accepted as a mainstream ideology in China, although it does take some effects in Chinese today's modern mentality. So we attached very much importance to peace, harmonious society, and we put a lot of importance to, let's say, collective value, and we are very patriotic as a nation. We as India, we both suffered a lot from the colonial period. We know the importance of independence. We would by all means defend our independence value. Okay. And also, I think China as a nation is very, very conclusive. I mean, we would be very happy to by means of communication and exchange of ideas incorporate some very successful experience of the other nations and to transform it into China's way of modernization. And China is an innovative nation in this sense. So a lot of love for discussion, but this is really a cultural entity. I think I absolutely want to emphasize that the traditional fine Chinese culture would play a very, very important role now and in the future in the making of China's future. In this sense, I just want to be very, very, very clear on my idea that I think India has you have your own culture, and India's way of modernization must be quite different, quite unique. Although to some degree you definitely follow some widely accepted principles and the rules, but India's modernization must be unique and never live away from your culture and your tradition. And Indian people have your very unique um, ideology of the world, and your life value system is quite unique. In this sense, I think, and also you even have a systemic interpretation of your life, which is unshakable. In this sense, I think India would be a very interesting participant in the future common fate, common destination, common destiny, or common future, share the future of mankind.
Yeah. To that very positive note, that India and China are going to have, much more positive exchanges and have common, destiny. I thank you, Professor, and I hope these conversations go. I know that there's so much more to learn from you. Get to know more about your thoughts, especially about the philosophical angle of it, the civilizational notions, how China is progressing towards it, and what is going to be the geopolitical impact of all of these, notions or the civilizational thing, especially because there's a lot of talk about civilizational clashes in future. So on that note, I think it was an interesting discussion, of course the first of its kind, and I'm going to probably have more of these discussions with you. Thank you for joining us, and to our viewers, thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share with these videos, and there are going to be many more interesting academic discussions. And please keep watching, subscribe to the channels for the updates that are going to come. Namaskar.